Hey everyone, Rho here. So a little something different for you today. A little while ago now, James, the founder of Siege Studios, reached out to me to see if I'd be interested in doing a little interview style chat with him for the channel. And obviously it's a bit different to what we've done before on the channel, but I really like the idea of it. Now, for those of you who may not be aware what Siege is, it's a professional commission miniature painting service. And this video is completely unsponsored or anything like that, just a real interesting conversation about his history in the hobby and how he came to be the CEO of Siege Studios. And of course we talk a little lore and your subscriber questions too. I'll drop a link to Siege in the description for any of you who may like to check out Siege some more after you've listened to the chat. And if you like this something different, be sure to let me know in the comments, and it's definitely something we can look at doing more of in the future. Now, I tried my best to be a good interviewer and let the guest answer his questions without the interviewer butting in all the time, because I don't know about you, but that really bugs me. Lastly, before we begin, with COVID still very prevalent at the moment, this was done virtually over Zoom. But with that said, sit back and relax, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. Before we begin, how are you? How have things been for you over the past year or so with everything going on with this pandemic?
Not easy in the slightest. It's been a very strange year, to be honest. Just with obviously all the office team having to work from home. The industry's kind of boomed a little bit, I think, which is a plus point, just because obviously everyone's at home. Lots of people have been furloughed, so there's no holidays, no going out to cinemas, no doing all this kind of stuff. So obviously there's, I suppose, more disposable income, and that's why people are buying more stuff like from Amazon and all these different things. So our industry has kind of gone a bit crazy as well as a result of it. So we've had a combination of being a lot busier than normal, as well as obviously not having anyone in the office, or if we do have people in the office, we have to make sure they take a test. They go in, one person in the room. It's just every possible and imaginable difficult thing. That's what's been involved, and this is before we talk about other things like, for example, there's been some shortages of products. We had obviously GW stopped producing for nearly 4 months. I think it was 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, a long time.
Then at the tail end of it all, we've got, they do their annual stock take as well. And obviously there's discrepancies and all this kind of stuff, blah, blah, like in any business of any size. And it's just, I've done more late night car park exchanges for models than I care to remember, just to keep client projects as close to target completion as possible. Obviously I'll always say things as they are and transparent, like I'm not going to sit here and say there haven't been delays or because of that. That's just part of it. You just have to go, right, well, there's going to be delays. There's nothing I can do about it. And that's just it. Obviously a lot of the team, obviously our kids, they haven't been going to school, so their kids have been at home. So they've kind of had to juggle work and obviously looking after their kids as well. So it's just, those things are inevitably going to cause delays and cause things, but we've just, I don't want to use the word plod on, but we have just, plodded on and just done, the best. I'd say we've probably worked at about 70%, 80% capacity, just because of how things have been, which is still pretty good, I suppose. But yeah, I'll come out at the end of this with a lot more grey hairs than I've got now for being 35. I can tell you that. So.
Kind of the way of the world it's been, really, hasn't it, for the past year or so? Everyone's just kind of had to deal with it and try and get on as best they can.
Yeah. It's been that way, I'm afraid. So yeah.
Okay, so let's get a little bit of history about you and how you first broke into the hobby.
Like 40k and like Games Workshop stuff, like that was around 9 years old. But before that, my granddad got me into FX kits. I've always been into World War II airplanes. I used to go Duxford, Bovington, all the time, like the Imperial War Museum in London. He was an anti-aircraft gunner in London during the Second World War, and obviously he knew every aircraft you could possibly imagine. I basically grew up on airfix kits, like from 4 or 5 years old. I didn't get like toy cars and things. I was just given Spitfires and Hurricanes and all this, and I stuck the wings on the wrong way around or whatever, and all this kind of stuff. And it just let me get on with it. But then around about 9 years old. Obviously, I was in secondary school, and I think secondary. I think I can't remember. It's been so long ago, but I think I was in secondary school. Oh no, I was in juniors at that time. My grandparents looked after me one weekend. I went to a charity shop with my nan, as you do when you're a youngster and you're pooling around with your grandparents. And I found a bag of like just a Warhammer like Space Marines, and I didn't know what it was. I was just like, oh, these are great. They got guns. They look like science fiction. Oh yeah, they're great. So I think that was around the time I was like heavily indoctrinated into Star Wars by my dad, and yeah, the rest is, so they say, is history. That's where I just, I still love Hurricanes and Spitfires, but 8 foot tall bolter wielding Space Marines ticks the box a lot harder. So, so yeah, that's kind of what happened. And then just started painting those really badly. Like, let's just start off with, like, everybody has that, the beginning paint jobs that they do when they start. But I've always done like art and painting and stuff. Like my parents stuck me out in the garden as a kid. Just painting on old rolls of wallpaper when I was very young to keep me entertained during autumn and summers and school holidays, or when before I was at school and all this kind of stuff. So I kind of always dabbled with paint and done painting, and then combining that with really cool toys or miniatures as it kind of fell hand in hand, so to speak. So yeah, so that's kind of how I started and got into it.
So you always had that kind of painting creative flair, or?
I don't know if it's about flair. I had 6 colours and big paper, so I don't know if you call that flair then. Yeah, but no. I just I used to sit out in the garden just painting with like literally primary colours and a couple, and a black and a white, and I think there was a brown as well. I think I just used to literally just paint all day, and then they'd end up on the wall, and then that'd get ripped down. I'd do another one. So it's just I think, I don't know, maybe my mum was hoping that I'd become one of these kids that like does a drawing and it's worth like millions or something. But no, so I've always dabbled with paint as a kid, and then got into models, airfix, then got into Games Workshop stuff, and then done the whole thing where I was going to my local Games Workshop on a Saturday and Sunday, and then there was a club at school and like all that kind of stuff. And that's kind of like how I got into it.
Yeah. So then how did that evolve over the years, obviously, into becoming Siege Studios?
Well, Siege started in 2013, and that was not too long ago, so nearly 8-9 years ago. But when I started, I really got into it as a kid. Like I'd done it in school, obviously, painted obviously with my friends and all that kind of stuff. And I suppose maybe because I had been painting since I was a little kid, like I maybe had a bit of a better ability than my mates, and it still wasn't very good, to be honest. But they'd ask me, "Oh, can you paint this for me?" Like, "Oh, that'd be great." And I'd get like when I was very young, I'd probably just get like some models, or I'd get like this or this, like a chocolate bar. I don't know, like, little things I'd get obviously in return for doing the models for them. Then when I went to secondary school, I was still into it. Just I had the gap like everybody has, so I had a big gap. And I'd done a few bits and bobs for my friends in sixth form and stuff, and then it stopped. And then I was in music and bands for many years. That all fell to pieces. We toured and done all this stuff, blah blah, and it just came to an end. Came back home and found all my Warhammer in the loft around my parents. I was like, well, I've got nothing else to do in my spare time, so I'll just get back into that. It's really cool. I got back into it. And then as a bit of a creative outlet, I started recording YouTube videos, just literally on my phone, movie maker, cut and paste, the way you do when you start out. And then I just started putting up showcases of like things I painted, or like I used to do things like kit bash diaries where I'd convert models and show how I'd converted it and done all these things. So I did that for a little while, when I got approached by a couple of guys who were essentially doing like a commission painting service, but there was no kind of like organization to it, or not very good organization to it. And again, remaining professional, not coming across the wrong way. Like behind that, obviously my years of work for my job around touring and all that kind of stuff, I worked in recruitment, and I worked as a recruitment consultant in a couple of different industries. And that industry is so regimented and so documented and so procedure driven, and your desk is your business within a company and all that kind of stuff, that mindset, I suppose, is just like I want to run it that way. I don't want it to be not organized, and obviously dealing with customers on a day-to-day basis, or clients obviously for recruitment, and obviously the candidates being customers, so to speak. I just didn't. I did it for a little bit with them, and I just didn't really like how it wasn't that way. So around about 2013, I set up the original email address, the Gmail, and and obviously named the business and all of that, and then just started kind of offering it through my YouTube channel and that kind of thing. Obviously started Instagram because the industry was nowhere near what it is now on Instagram and other social media platforms. Back then, Games Workshop didn't even have an Instagram account, and very few sort of companies, or so to speak, had one. So I just started Instagram, started putting out photos, and it kind of built from there. And then through YouTube, Matt at Mini Wargaming put out like a request for like commission painters to get in touch, and they commented on one of my videos or something. I think it was either Dave or Matt commented on one of my videos, so there was kind of a little bit of a connection. So I just messaged him and said, look, I've seen that you put an advert out that you need some people to paint stuff for you. I thought it would just be cool to paint some models and get it on their channel. I thought it'd be great. Yeah. Did that, and then they had a Mini Wargaming Space Marine Army in their green and yellow colours. I think they're called like Sentinels of the Forge or something like that. I think that's what they're called.
Okay.
And I painted a load of bits and bobs for that army, sent it off, thought nothing else of it really. I thought I'd be cool if like they mentioned like that I painted it or whatever, blah blah.
Yeah.
Well, I think they had the biggest channel in the industry at that point, and I was just like, oh well, it'd be cool to showcose my models on that channel. If I get
absolutely,
if I get like 100 subscribers or something, that'd be amazing. Like crazy like that. So I've been painting like a little army thing for my weekend battle brothers that I was going to head office like to play like battle brothers tournament with my friends. So we drove up to Nottingham, and I had my phone obviously with me, and the whole weekend it was just going nuts. And I was just like, because I'm obviously playing a tournament, I wasn't really checking my phone or anything. And long story short, they uploaded a video with my email address, like the Siege Gmail email address in the description, and they took some photos and bits and bobs from my channel and all these kind of things. And then at that point, I think I had the website, and they'd taken a few images from the website and put them onto the video, embedded them or whatever. Suffice to say, I woke up with nearly 1,500 emails. And I was like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Bit of a shock for you.
Yeah, I was like, I really don't know what I'm going to do, because my phone was going crazy. And I was like, oh, I wasn't sure what happened. And obviously, because I'd been playing games and stuff, I was checking it. I was saying, I've seen the video. I was like, oh, and then it twigged. I was like, oh, I must have put a video up showing what I've done. And yeah, so that's kind of where the mass influx of initial work came from. And I was at that point, I was probably just starting doing competition painting with a couple of people that I knew that done it, and those kind of things. And I just spoke to a few of them and said, look, this has happened. I need help, and I want to set up a proper business and run a commission painting business that's properly run, that has a very regimented process. Everything's the clients that understand the process from start to finish, and everything's documented. It's taking everything that I know and done daily, weekly, monthly in recruitment, but putting it into commission painting and creating a brand and business model around that structure.
Very sensible approach.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it is. You'd think that would be the normality in the industry, but I'm known for calling. I'm known for calling commission painting the Wild West, and again, I'll always be professional and respectful to everybody else, but it is very much like that. Like, there's phenomenal people out there that do incredible work, but the reason I call it the Wild West is for those reasons, and it's really interesting, and without diverging from the question asked too much, my viewpoint on it is that commission painting is no different from any other trade. If you dive right back to the key competencies of what a trade is defined by, so experience, ability, training, all these kind of things, it's not really different. Like, the years you spend getting better as a painter essentially is your training, and the only difference being is that a trade, a carpenter, electrician, plumber, whatever the case may be, will go to college, university, and get a bit of paper that says you're qualified.
Yeah.
And that they train you over that period. Well, your training is every day and every hour and every minute that you put into getting better as a painter. So there's no real disparity other than the fact you don't have a piece of paper and you don't go to college, in my mind. And it's the results that you paint that are determine whether you're good or not, if that makes sense. And this is all with a caveat of it's art, and art is within the eye of the beholder, because someone might look at it and go, well, that's not very good, and someone might look at it and go, that's great. And it's a difficult one, because our industry, which I love, comes from hobby industry. It's a hobby background thing. And obviously my background is very much in, obviously recruitment. So I ran a desk within a company that was my business, and I done 360 on what that needed to involve. So when I approach starting a company in this industry, to see that things aren't regulated and to see that there's no sort of like professional standards, or there's no sort of way of determining what is good and what is just not, if that makes sense, is a bit wish-washy. And that's why the drive to create something which has that sort of like, well, this is our standard. And again, without divulging too much of how Siege works and what's involved in it, because obviously I'm not going to do that, but
yeah,
the reality is we have an internal process that guarantees a standard, no matter who paints it within the company. And that Siege is at the point now, after nearly 9 years, where we've got 10 members of staff in the office and nearly 60 painters. So that structure is designed to work. It's like having an internal governing body, if that makes sense. I can't go, well, I'm going to create the Chartered Institute of Commission Painters. I can't do that because it'd be biased towards Siege. That's just not going to happen. Yeah. But what I can do is make sure that within my business, there's a way of stuff being regimented, and so that everybody involved knows what the standards are and what is required and expected as a minimum. And that's essentially a bit of an overall quick synopsis of how I approached it and what I've done, essentially. But yeah, and then we're at this crazy point where we're at now. So
So I mean, I've been a customer of Siege a few times over the years. So
yeah, and I didn't know. So
no, you didn't know.
I've always known you as Rho. I was always known you as Rho. So I was quite shocked. So yeah.
But in being that customer a few times over the years, I've seen you grow, obviously exponentially over the recent years. I mean, that must have been quite a wild ride for you as the founder of the company.
Yeah, I would. The best analogy I could give is it's like riding a wild stallion. Like it's literally we're in control to an extent, but it's still got this crazy thing. I'm very guilty for not actually understanding what people see the company as, and that's because obviously I started this thing in a little flat above a chemist, and I've been there day in, day out from the moment I start to the moment I finish every day. And I'm not really too aware of the outside perception too much, I think, because I'm just focused on doing it and growing it and building it. But so to give you a bit of an idea, up until Joe, my artist manager and an office manager, he's been with me for nearly 3 years. So 2.5 years, it'll be 3 in May next year. But when he first came to the office, obviously he'd known of the business and seen the business before his interview. And I think his expectations when he arrived at the office was very different to what he actually saw when he came there, because it was me. By then I'd moved to one flat and then moved the business out of my second flat into an office complex, into an office building. And I had literally one room on the top floor. And obviously I think he was expecting it to be way bigger than it was, because obviously what it was seen as, blah blah, and it wasn't. And then the thing is his first words were like, when I opened and sat him down, he was like, well, where's everybody else? I was like, no, it's just me, dude. And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, it's just me. And I was like, I do everything from here. Like the video, my desk was here, there was another desk in front of me for the person that was joining, and then the video table was to the right, and then the QC area was to the right, and all this kind of stuff. And it was just like, was this? I was like, yeah. He was like, oh. I was like, yes. Oh. He was like, right, yeah, okay. There's a lot of work to do. I was like, there is, yeah. so yeah. And then since then, in the last 2 years, or did I say 2.5 years, like we've taken over the other room on the floor that we're on, and then in January of this year, during the pandemic, we've taken over the whole entire downstairs floor beneath us.
Wow.
So I say this all the time. I'm like super daily, weekly, monthly humbled by things that customers say, that clients say, that things that happen during the business. And like, I think it's really important. And it's, I'll always touch upon this from my recruitment days. Like, I think it's really important to, there's a couple of key principles, which when it comes to business, that I always have at heart, because I used to do things a certain way in recruitment. And I'm a firm believer in that when things went super busy and I had physically needed other people, the business is not just me. Like it requires and needs, all the people that are involved that make the day-to-day operation, whether it be all the projects we complete, or the administration, or the quality control, or the packing, or the videography, or the media, or all those things that get done. If I didn't have those, not only would I have to super glue a brush to every single digit and try and paint all the projects, but I'd have to try and type emails and pack things at the same time. So the business is more than just me. And I think there's a lot of, from experience in recruitment and walking into many companies daily, weekly, monthly, and seeing how a lot of owners run their business, my mindset is very different to that. Like, I don't, no matter how big Siege gets, this is something super close to my heart. Like, I will never, ever, ever expect or people to do something that I wouldn't be prepared to do, or I would never want anybody to think that I wouldn't stop what I'm doing and go, right, do you need help with this or whatever. I think everyone in the company, they some of them say it as a joke to me and they call me the boss and all of that kind of stuff, but I genuinely hate it. Like, I hate that word, because a lot of people resent that word, and a lot of people, when they say that word or think about that word, it makes them think of someone that doesn't know what they're doing, has no understanding of their business, and just simply tells people what to do. And Siege, the culture is not like that. Like, everyone knows it's for the greater good of the company. Not that I'm a Tau fan at all. It's like, that's the only analogy that I can use to explain kind of like what the ethos and culture is at the company. There's been plenty of occasions over the last 3 years or 2 years, 2.5 years, with everybody that's joined the company in that time frame, where they've brought an idea to the table, and as long as it doesn't damage reputation, it's effective for the business and it holds water. It's like someone being able to bring a business plan within the company and go, I've got this idea, and as long as they bring like a tangible, this is my idea, this is how we're going to do it, this is what we're going to do. Doing it on my own makes no sense, because I'm part of this massive thing that I'm aware of now, that is this thing. And I want to have that as my thing within the company, and it kind of gives a bit of ownership of that part of the business, so the person emotionally feels connected to it, if you follow me. I used to see people in jobs that used to add value to a business and never get rewarded for it. I used to see people that used to walk into a company, make a sizable difference, and then be treated like nothing. And I don't want that within my company, and I never want to be seen as a boss. I would always like to be seen as the leader who will help anyone that I physically can, and genuinely try and steer the business in a way that it benefits everybody, not myself. So that's kind of like a bit about the culture, and why I'm so passionate about the people that are in the business and are part of this thing that has just humbled me every day. So yeah.
Any big times over the years with the hard work you've been putting in that you've had your doubts?
So I started, when I started Siege in 2013, like I wasn't full time. So I was painting obviously for the business. I was doing all the administration, all the emails, all those things up until obviously 2.5 years ago. And I worked full time in recruitment. So I was doing a 50, 60-hour week, and anyone who knows what recruitment's like, you literally have to speak to candidates in the evening before their interview. Some of them will go, I've lost my interview confirmation, can you send it again? So there were nights where I was obviously trying to do Siege and do emails for Siege, and I'd be cooking dinner and I'd have a candidate on the phone trying to talk to them about their interview tomorrow. And like, it's a lot of work. And I think that's the thing that, like, without going into too many sort of personal details, there's some things that happened in my life that gave me a very much like determination to just try as hard as I physically can, like, and not, and things happen for a reason, and like, if you don't achieve something, then that's how it's meant to be. But the reality is that there were plenty of times when I worked for a local company here in Wickford in Essex, and it was a family run recruitment business. Worked there for 3 years, had the carpet pulled under my feet before an end of year bonus that my mortgage was back then was depending on, lost my mortgage. So I quit instantaneously on the following Friday, and I just went, I'm doing Siege part time around obviously my recruitment job. It's doing okay, it's doing all right, but if I gave it the work and the hours that I'm putting into my full-time job, then that surely exponentially must grow, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I just used my holiday entitlement, which I hadn't taken, and just quit instantaneously and left on the spot. And the funniest bit, and that always sticks with me, and is that whenever there's a difficult time, or there's something that's that we need to work through, or it's stressful, and I think especially during the pandemic, it's one of the things that's been at the back of my mind the whole time, is that I know that company furloughed all their staff, and everyone, and a lot of people lost their jobs. So if I'd have remained there, and I would have been one of those people. Whereas now I'm in control of my own fate, because obviously of doing Siege, if that makes sense. And the following Monday after I quit, one of my directors turned around to the whole entire company and said, "Oh, James left. He's gone to paint toy soldiers for a living," and tried to make a massive joke out of it. And obviously one of my friends who worked there still sent me a message saying he's just said this, and that fueled me. It was like pouring petrol on the fire.
Yeah, I can understand.
And yeah, it's just been, I think to anyone who wants to ever do anything for themselves, I think one of the things to bear in mind is never to lose sight of where you want to get to or what you want to achieve.
Mm.
I think it's very, very easy to fall off course, you know, and I think you need something to fuel that fire to keep you going. And I think that's the thing for me that did it, you know, is being told, oh, you're going to paint toy soldiers, you'll never make it work or whatever, you know. I was like, right, I'm going to make it work so well that you'll eat your words, you know. And whether I ever see you or talk to you ever again, but I know that if you were to look into how I'm doing or whatever, because obviously I'm on LinkedIn and all that, and you know, you go, okay, well, it's 8 years down the line and they're still going in their website. You see what I mean? So it's just that's kind of like the mindset behind it.
Yeah, that self-satisfaction, don't you? You know, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
How did you find the business was affected during COVID?
Really hard, being frank. As I mentioned earlier, like model supply was quite difficult for certain things. Again, lots of late night car park exchanges. There's a really funny story where I drove to a car park in Chelmsford, which is just near Wickford, and it's about 20 minutes away, and to meet a guy to pick up a defiler. So we're in this car park.
Shady exchanges going on, yeah.
So we're in this car park, and this is one of the moments I'm talking about. I'll explain why in a sec. So we're in this car park, and obviously you can imagine the scene. It's nighttime. Pull up to the car next to me. I'm like, "You got the defiler?" Yeah, I got it. Obviously, and it's because it's COVID. I had to like literally chuck an envelope with the money into the thing. So I chucked obviously that, and then as he's about to throw the box, I see a white thing pull up next to me.
It wasn't, was it?
It's a police car. so I roll down the other window, and it's like something out of like a comedy show or something. So the guy that I'm buying the model off of is to the right of me with his window open, looking at me, and then I'm looking to my left, the police car next to me with the window rolled down, with two police officers next to me, going, "What are you doing, guys?" And I went, "I don't really know how to explain this, but I'm exchanging some models for some money." And he went, I said, the first thing I said was, "It's not drugs, don't worry." So the funniest thing was that obviously like, a lot of military and like people like that, they collect obviously the hobby. I promise you, this guy went, "Oh my God, isn't Siege Studios your business?" I went, "Yes." He went, okay, we'll go. So Siege actually got me out of a situation. I was quite but yeah, you know, so it's just things like that really kind of make me think like, wow, this thing is actually way bigger than I even realized. Like when a police officer can pull up to me and go, "Oh, you're just buying some models off a guy." I went, "Yeah." He went, "Oh, okay, yeah, that's fine."
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
So it's getting me nearly in tears now laughing about it. But yeah, no, yeah. So it's things like that like, you know, there's been loads of situations that have just really been difficult. Like model supply is one. Obviously, we had a drought of like primer, like in the last couple of months, like getting Chaos Black and getting all this kind of stuff. It's been difficult to get that. Obviously, there's, you know, again, off the back of the issues with supply for various things, like it's actually been quite good for many companies because they've come out with their own versions of products, or they come out with their own products and things. Like you've got, you know, like you know, so yeah, essentially, yeah, it's been turbulent is a word I would use. Like I was very fortunate that I didn't have to furlough anyone from the office, which I'm super happy to be able to say and do, because I genuinely, I think trust is really important, and I think when people believe in what they're doing for the company, that bridge of trust is really important. And to be able to have them all working from home doing 60% of what they would normally be doing is better than them being paid less and doing nothing. Does that make sense? So you know, so yeah, exactly. So that was the sort of reason why, you know, I took that decision, and it was a bit of a risk. Again, in another situation like you were asking about, it's a risk, obviously, keeping everybody on during that uncertain time. But we're just super fortunate that that we managed to continue as close to normal as possible. We lost all of our physical classes. Obviously, we teach loads of physical classes all over the UK annually, like 20-25 classes. So all the revenue that's generated by those is gone immediately, which is why we switched to doing online tuition, like video tuition, like through Zoom or through, you know, Discord or all these kind of things, which counterbalanced it a little bit. Nowhere near did it make up for the loss financially that we obviously resulted in that context. But yeah, things obviously are getting better now, which is good. Whether everything that's happening at the minute, it means we're going to go back into a lockdown or whatever, I don't know. But I just want to be in a situation where we're prepared to just stay on course as best as possible with it, never mind how sort of choppy the waves get, if that makes sense.
Don't think anybody knows at the moment, do they? That's the thing. You just have to kind of deal with it as it comes along.
No, exactly. We have obviously our painting competition. So Iron Skull, we cancelled it once in the beginning of this year. Moved it to 2022. Told everyone the tickets are transferable. Obviously, there were a couple of people like, no, I don't know. I'm going to wait and see how everything goes. We refunded a few. We've still got it going ahead for next year. If obviously the situation changes again, we'll just have to, move it or whatever. I don't know, but yeah. So it's very interesting times at the minute. So
yeah. What's the biggest piece of advice you can give to someone who would hopefully like to be a commission painter specifically for Siege one day?
So yeah, like I think again, going back to what I was saying about obviously there being lots of different people in the industry that do commission paint. Whether you're someone who just works from home in the bedroom, or whether you do it part time for your friends, or whether you do it, I think one of the things to understand is that people's expectations, because of it coming from a hobby background, are never normally going to marry up to what you expect in return for the service that you provide. I think that's one of the things I'd definitely say.
Yeah.
It's been a long, hard fight to get Siege where it is. I always want to offer the best service and quality that we do. And for a commission painting, like there's this whole thing with like mates rates, and there's this whole thing with things. But touching upon something close to my heart, which is time, it's the one commodity you don't get any more of. Yeah. And obviously, I don't want to make the conversation super deep and boring for everybody, but in a very short synopsis of it, like you don't get any more of it. And when you're spending it doing something for someone else, when you could be doing it, spending it with your kids, your family, or doing models for yourself or anything else, for me, it's the most premium of commodities. But the problem is that because it's not a physical thing, like something you can see, hold, manipulate, or smell, touch, whatever, it's devalued hugely. And that's the battle that you're going to have to fight, whether you're just starting out. Obviously, I'm in a very fortunate position where after nearly 9 years of a lot of hard work, we are now at a point where, our customers understand the work that goes into the models that are produced. And we obviously issue quotes and we talk about that. And we have long-standing clients because they understand obviously what goes into it. They get updated constantly. They get a professional service. And we have this infrastructure in place that makes the process as best for the painter and also for the client, if that makes sense. So in a sort of long-winded answer, just respect your own time, respect what you put into it. That's something that I would definitely advocate to people. Obviously, in joining us, we have a set of minimum criteria. We have an application process. We have an application test to work for the business. And that has to be met or exceeded, and everybody who joins goes through that now. In the early days, obviously, I had a lot of my friends who were competition painters, so the standard was there to start off with. But as we've grown, the recruitment process obviously is my bag, because I've done it for 11 years professionally for lots of bigger companies and things. That same process is involved with Siege. So yeah.
Do you find that most people drastically underestimate the amount of time that's needed in the whole process?
Yeah. It's that very, very well-known thing, which is cost, time, and quality. I think is the triarch of things. Yes, you can pay minimal and get something done very quick. I'm quite happy to be upfront with people and say we aren't the quickest and we aren't the cheapest, because what we deliver makes those two things tangible, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's the kind of way that I approach it, and the culture that we have here. The question I suppose to ask is, if someone wants something really quick just for gaming with their mates to sling around the table, that's fine and that's perfectly good, and that's again what that person wants, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, we're probably not the right company for you.
Yeah.
You want something that you're going to keep for the rest of your life. We bring to life your favorite faction, army, character, model, whatever the case may be, and its state goes on your shelf, in a cabinet, on the tabletop, whatever. We're the company for you. And I've always been transparent about that. Like, we get approached at conventions. Obviously, we go to Adepticon, we go to Salute, and I have people come out and go, "Oh, that's brilliant. I love that model in the cabinet. How much is that?" We talk about price, or talk about something with them on average price or whatever, because again, we're a bespoke service. So they might want it slightly different to the other person or whatever. So no commission really ever. It's like a bit of artwork. No commission's ever really the same as someone else's, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No.
So you talk obviously about that, and then the rebuttal is, oh my God, that's crazy, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, well, do you know how much time's been spent on it? The skill that person's spent and invested over, and the time they've invested to get that skill over many years is worth something as a tangible commodity. Paint, like, paint is not really, in the grand scheme of things, it's irrelevant. Like a £2.50 pot of paint, or some pots of paint that cost you £30, £40 is irrelevant when compared to what you're putting in time wise into the model. And I think that's what we try and do. We try and just teach our clients the value of what they're purchasing, and that's the approach that we have. Obviously we're not right for everybody, and I get that, and we're never going to have 100% clientele. I get that, but what we will have is obviously a clientele that we can work with to the best of our ability in delivering what they want, and that's how we are. So yeah.
Yeah, no, makes absolute sense. I see you've recently added the custom character service. So I was just wondering if you could give us a little brief explanation about why you've decided on that.
Yeah, so custom service, or CS, is something that I've always wanted to do, and I think the idea came from lots of people actually contacting us, going, "I love this model, but I want my own version of it. Like, I want it in this pose, or I've got a friend that collects this army, and I want that character killing this model because that's my friend's army, and I want to sort of rub it in a bit," or things like that. So we kind of have always done it to an extent, but never as a product within the business, or never as a service within the business. Right. Like myself specifically, like there's lots of models that I would love, lots of either models that I've thought up of, like characters, or there's models that I love that I just want a new model for, or my own, not even a new model, it's my own version of that model, how I want that model, if that makes sense. But it's, for me, I think it's the best service we can offer to people, because they get this thing that is a truly unique one of one. We're not here making models like a factory, just churning out a new model in a new pose. That's not what we do. Like, it's very much, we're not sitting here with loads of stock or anything. It's literally, if a customer approaches us and says, "I love this model," or "I've got my own chapter master, or my own character, or my own whatever, and I want you guys to bring it to life for me," it's a really nice thing to be able to take. One of the beauties of commission painting is creating people's thoughts and dreams and visions and things. Yeah. But then it's doing this is like turning it to 11 and creating the epitome of what they want in a model.
Yeah.
So I said, when we launched it, it was just something that I didn't know how well it was going to do. And a lot of people have gone, "Oh my God, I can create any model that I want, any character that I want in my way and how I want it." And the beauty of what we've done, I think, is that because every single model comes with a certificate. So it's got a signature of the business, signature of the person who's converted and sculpted any green stuff, sculpted parts on it, signature of the painter that painted it, and then there's the signature from Joe, my artist manager. So it's got 4 signatures on it, and it's a unique one of one miniature. We'll never ever repeat that model ever again, because obviously we document all the models that we create. So if someone were to ask us for X character, like the one that they've seen that we've done, we won't do it. Like, we categorically will not do it. It's just, we'll say, "Well, we've made one before. Here's this one that you've seen. Yours won't be in the same pose, because we don't make the same model ever again, and it might be slightly different in some way, just to give you a unique piece, if that makes sense." So, and I realise, obviously, as revisions are made, or different customers approached, it will vary quite considerably. And hopefully, the difficulty for us is to not dilute what that client wants in the model, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'm very conscious of the industry and the way that it is at the minute, obviously, with like 3D printing and all this kind of stuff and stuff. And we don't really want to get involved with that. We just want to give someone a very premium, unique item that is designed to be something they're going to keep for the rest of their life. That's kind of the idea of custom service. It's not a high turnover product. Like, I don't expect everybody to go for it, but it's for those that really love a model and want it for the rest of their life. And that's kind of how we approach it. And that's what it is. I can't, well, I've got my own Dante, how I want him. Again, my favorite character, always will be, always has been. It's like a Karandras that we've done for the launch of custom service, one of my favorite of the Phoenix Lords. I just always felt that he should truly resemble the way that predatory hunter, he's known as the silent hunter, I think is his nickname. So he doesn't look like that in the model the way that he is. And I just wanted to create like a really crouched, sort of like stealthy model, and that's what we've done with it. And there's a few others that we've done for the release, which are just real knockbacks to some of my favorite models from the past and artworks and things, like, for example, the Space Wolf, the 3rd edition Codex, and Sergeant Centurius from the Legion of the Damned, Ezekiel in a bit of a different pose carrying a big book. that's kind of what we try to do with it. And yeah, like a lot of clients have gone, that's incredible, I'd love to have this model. I've got my own chapter master that's never ever had, I've never been able to make the model how I want it, you know, and can you guys make it for me? Like, yeah. So, you know, and again, we're using Games Workshop parts, so we're not, you know, there's a conversion, there's green stuff, traditional sculpting involved, reposing, pinning, all this kind of stuff, and also a good selection of parts that lean as much as possible to that client's vision. So we've got obviously loads of spare parts, and they're all Games Workshop. We don't use third-party parts at all whatsoever. We'd always use, especially with all the new stuff about it only being GW parts and things like that for tournaments and those things. So they're the kind of guidelines that we stick to as a company.
Okay. Whereabouts do you see the whole industry in 5 to 10 years down the line? Just going from strength to strength?
Yeah. I think this thing is the fastest, biggest rolling snowball you've ever seen. With the media and all the stuff that's being done now, I think, you know, it won't be long till you see films. I've been saying it for quite some time, and I think the next 3 to 5 years within our industry for Games Workshop and for the growth of the industry is going to be crucial to the future of the whole entire community, hobby, everything. I think the pandemic has actually helped, as bad as that is. It's been terrible, and there's been so much travesty and bad stuff that's happened over the last sort of 2 years nearly, which is obviously terrible. But if I solely look at the community and the industry, we've got so many more people that are involved in this hobby, community, painting, gaming. You know, obviously tournaments are starting to come back, so they're interested in going to their first tournament. You know, there's so much stuff that's exponentially growing purely because of the confines of I can't go out, I can't do this, I can't. I've got Warhammer in the loft. I might paint some miniatures. I used to do that when I was a kid. I'm going to try it again now. All my friends just started doing it. I used to do that when I was a kid. I'm going to buy some models. Oh, I've seen this, blah blah. Like, you know, I'll talk about obviously the things on like the animation and stuff. Like, I can't have this conversation with you without talking about Astartes, for example. Like that, it was just bonkers. That for me is everything that a Marine should be, and how they move, they act, they have the skill, the aggression, all that kind of stuff. Like, and I think people seeing that, and I've always said it, I've wanted to go down to, you know, Odeon, Cineworld, any of these places and watch a film of this, because it's like, I think they probably have best IP and the best science fiction IP out there, and that's a steep call when you've got Star Trek, Star Wars, you know, all these different things. Genuinely, I think it's one of the best science fiction IPs. And I think a lot of people get into stuff through watching series like on Netflix and all these different things. So I think that model of delivery of a narrative or of a thing is going to just explode. It's like strapping a NASA rocket booster to the industry, you know. And I think we're on the precipice of that. You know, I compare it to the lift hill on a roller coaster. When we reach this point very, very soon and we tip over, it's just going to go, and that's kind of how I look at it essentially.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit of lore. I heard you say a few minutes ago your favorite character is Dante.
Yeah, the OG, the man, the legend. Yeah.
Why do you have such an affinity for Dante?
I think I've always been a Blood Angel fanboy, and I think anyone who knows me knows that. I think I saw the second ed box art. Red's my favorite color anyway, and I think just because I read, to be perfectly honest, in the beginning. But then obviously I started learning about them. I've got the second edition Angels of Death Codex, obviously, with Blood Angels and our brothers, the Dark Angels, obviously, and fell in love with the characters that are in there. You know, funny enough, Dante wasn't my initial first favorite character. Like Tycho has always had a close place in my heart. I've always thought his the fact that they made him from a battle report in a White Dwarf and it became a canon character, and then they made a really cool model of him. I thought that was just a really nice way of bringing a character into the universe. Obviously he died, which is a bit of a shame, but his background is really cool. And then obviously read more about Dante, and then I just naturally, obviously, because that character is no longer in the narrative, I still love the model. I've painted about hundreds of Tycho models because they're my favorite model, one of my favorite models. But Dante obviously took the forefront of that, and then since reading loads of things about him even before his the stories that Guy Haley has done, I've just fell in love with the character. I think he's incredible. It's real balance of like angelic majesty, and then like this difficult, super. I've got to make every decision correctly because it has so many so many possibilities of error. Like, and then we have the visions of this golden warrior before the emperor at the end, at the very end. So he's got this burden on his shoulders. Is it me? Is it not? You know, all this kind of stuff. And then I just obviously the model's really cool. He's got some really cool war gear. He's got a great background, and like I just naturally sort of, I think everybody in the community leans towards a faction or a character that they kind of look up to a little bit, and they kind of they see as a character that they kind of find parity with, if that makes sense, because of their morals or ethics or the way they come across. I think that's the kind of way that I would look at it. Like, and Blood Angels for me, just they're that 50-50. They're like super aggressive, absolutely terrible when they've got the red thirst or the black rage. They succumb to the black rage, and then they've got this really nice human side of them where they're like just decent, loyal, honest, and I think that's a cool thing. I love the fact that they distract themselves from the red thirst by doing all their own artifice. So they don't typically have their own serfs and things like that. They'll typically clean their own armor or adorn their armor with works of art, because that distracts them from the red thirst, which I think is a really, really cool thing about them. It's like they have that connection to their armor and their connection to their war gear because they've created it, and I think that's quite a cool little thing. And then they can just completely let go when they fight enemies and just release themselves to the red thirst and use that as a strength towards the ultimate goal, which is the betterment of humanity and the destruction of enemies of the emperor. And I think it's really just a really cool narrative. So
it's the beauty of the lore, isn't it? There's just so many of these awesome narratives just scattered throughout it.
Believe me, we could talk about Blood Angels forever. So please, I'll shut up. I'll shut up now. I promise you.
Just one more then on Dante. Do you think we'll ever see him as the Golden Warrior before the Golden Throne?
I would be very sad for him to leave the narrative. I think he's been there for so long, and it's like taking the topping off of the cake. Like, the cake's still great, but topping is what makes it. And I think that his shoes would be very hard to fill. You've got great characters like Mephisto and Corbelow, all the other characters. I actually think that the Golden Warrior is probably the Sanguinor. In my mind, I think, because obviously I don't want to have any spoilers in here for anybody, and I'll say this now that I'm not going to spoil it, but Dante and the Sanguinor have a very close bond, and without ruining it, obviously there's a connection between them in some way, if that makes sense. And obviously he's got this thing throughout his whole entire lineage through the chapter, even since he was a sergeant when he went on a space hulk with the Sanguinor. He met the Sanguinor. Do you know what I mean? So there's throughout his career, if we call it that, throughout his career, he's had this. Oh, hi, it's you again. And and what you doing following me? But the reality is that I think that the Golden Warrior most likely is the Sanguinor. Obviously, there's various Primarchs that are coming back and all this kind of stuff, as in like they're gradually coming back. Ours, unfortunately, unless there's some crazy retcon, I don't think will ever come back. There is some bits and bobs, again, without trying to ruin things for anybody that hasn't read any of the books or anything. Sanguinius isn't dead, it's suffice to say, let's put it that way. But I don't think he'll ever come back in the form that we expect. And I think personally the Sanguinor will fall into that role, if that makes sense. I think the Golden Warrior is the Sanguinor, because he's always there to help them in moments of need. And I think if the Blood Angels are at a point where they're in such dire need of of him, that would be the one moment where he is there, if that makes sense. And that's kind of the way I see it. I think Dante, whether they kill him off or not, we know now that he's got white hair as opposed to the black hair or the golden hair. It's really weird. There's the Blood Quest book from many years ago, which used to be a Warhammer Monthly.
He likes to dye his hair,
it's sponsored by L'Oreal. So whatever color his hair was before, it doesn't matter. We're not going to have the Ragnar Blackman conversation about hair. But the reality is that I think it would be sad for him to not be in the narrative anymore. Plus, Blood Angels have lost too many cool characters. It took me ages to get over Tycho dying, but yeah, I think that's who the Golden Warrior is. I think it's a Sanguinor. That's the way.
What side of the fence do you stand on in regards to a Sanguinius return? Should he or shouldn't he?
That is a very difficult one, because obviously I'm like, everyone's getting their Primarch back and mine's not going to come back, But at the same time, part of me is like, I think if they did, it would really dilute the awesome narrative about him and what he'd done. Whether you believe that he did cause that chink in the armor of Horus, that the Emperor killed Horus, or whether you believe that he was killed really quickly and didn't matter to the fight with the Emperor, I think that the action of him doing that is the pure definition of the culture and how Blood Angels are, that nobility and that sacrifice that they're willing to make for the betterment of humanity and to do things for the Emperor. So to kind of go, oh no, that didn't happen, or we fix that, it will dilute what the Blood Angels are in my mind. So I think the better way to do it would be, and again, I really don't want to spoil things for people, but I think the Sanguinor will essentially replace in a way the requirement for our Primarch to come back, and that can be done in many ways. As I said, Sanguinius technically isn't dead, and I'll leave it at that. And I think that there's a way for him to come back in some form, but not him. Let's put it that way.
Yep.
So yeah, I just don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't read the books.
Of course.
Yeah, it's so hard not to. It's so hard not to. But that's kind of how I see it.
Okay, on to a few subscriber questions that I got from the subscribers. So first up, are you still a regular painter yourself?
No, so I took my hand off the tools, so to speak, probably about 3 years ago. It was at the point where things were getting so busy in the office. I was just like, I'm working all day, getting up at 6, half 5 in the morning, working till 6, 7 o'clock at night, coming home, making dinner, and then having to sit in front of either a laptop or paint stuff. I was just like, I'm going nuts. It's really frustrating me because I haven't got the time to do the things that I started this thing doing, if that makes sense. And I think that's one of the hardest things for me as the company is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It's not that I had this conversation with Joe quite a few times. Like, it's not that I don't want to. It's not that I don't trust other people to do it. I don't think. I think it's because I never want that air of, oh, he would never do this, or he would never do this in the company. I think that's the thing really at the root of it. I just don't want to be seen as a person that swans in, doesn't do much, goes home. And I think still having your hand on the tool, so to speak, I think that for me retains that, well, he does care about the business, and he does still want to do what he expects everybody else to do, if that makes sense. And I think that's really important for me, just personally. But unfortunately, that's not how modern business works. And I'm becoming more and more aware of that daily, to be honest, over the last 18 months, that it's just, I can't be doing, not because I don't want to, I think it's beneath me, but I can't be doing these things that unfortunately take up my time, which again is that thing I don't get any more of, and I need to be dedicating that to other things that are for the betterment of everyone in the company and for the growth of the business. And I think that's the weird balance of things that I'm going through at the moment personally. But in the long-winded answer, yes, I do. I don't paint commissions for the company anymore typically. What I do is, like for example, things with customer service. Dante, obviously I was going to paint that model. There's a couple of, when there's special things for the business, I like to kind of paint those because my time isn't infinite, and I can invest that time into that special project for the business that has that huge leap for the company, if that makes sense. And that's kind of how I try to show to everybody in the business that I still want to do the thing that I'd done when I started this company. So in a long-winded answer, that hopefully that answers the question for you. So yes and no, but for large projects or commissions, or even smaller commissions, I just haven't got time to do that.
Yeah. What's your opinion of contrast paints?
I like them. I think the delivery of them, they're great for new people that come into the because you don't want just grey plastic on the table, and that's a great way of just getting that Wraith Bone or Wraith Seer on, getting the colours on, getting basic understanding of paint flow, paint consistency, how to obviously use a paintbrush, be learning that brush control, and all those kind of things. I think they're good products for junior or inexperienced painters, all the way up to your competition, super high-end painters, because you can use them in different ways. Like I always say this, like a lot of people go, oh, this color is really rubbish, blah, blah. I don't really believe that. I think that a paint is good for a job, as a task. So if one paint, let's just take, for example, I'm just going to say paint. So Warp Stone Glow, it's a great green for glazing colors. If you want to glaze green onto a miniature, it's great. If you want to block in green over a model, it's probably not the right color to do it. But that doesn't mean that Warp Stone Glow is a rubbish paint. It just means it's not designed, or not, its properties and behavior aren't good for blocking in. It's good for glazing. So with that being said, like a lot of the contrast paints are great for either for a basic level for just getting colors onto the models really quickly, and just giving you something that you can be proud of on the tabletop as a junior painter and someone who's a bit inexperienced. And at the top end, they're great for doing glazing, boosting colors, adding saturation to colors, adding subtle tonal variation to areas, all those kind of things. So they're a great product. I just think in my mind, if I was delivering it, I'd obviously do what was done, and great for getting your models painted really quickly, but I also would have really hammered home the higher end of it as well, so it shows that it's used for everything, if that makes sense. I think unfortunately it developed a little bit of a stigma of just, I'll slap it on the model, blah blah, and I don't think that delivery was the best in my opinion. I think there could have been better ways of doing it, and that's just my opinion on it essentially.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
How did you cope with painting burnout?
That's a really interesting one. I distract myself with something that's new and varied. Believe me, like, I've got a massive Catachan army that I'm trying to get through at the minute. There's a lot of bodies. But the reality is that the best way to tackle it is to remove yourself from your comfort zone of what you're used to. So if, like in my example, I'm painting, models that are nearly older than a lot of people that I know, and you're painting hundreds of them, the reality is that pick something so far removed from that, and paint that in colors that you've never used before, and it completely resets what it is that you're doing. So for example, I used to paint Iron Warriors. I had an Iron Warrior army, and I had a super vibrant Sylvaneth or Wood Elf character to the side of my painting area, that whenever I got that burnout, I was like, I'm so sick of doing chevrons or doing silver. I'd go, I'm going to spend half an hour on this model, and I'm going to just use all the colors that are not even ever used on my Iron Warriors, so that it just resets that, I'm painting something different. So you're not losing that time to, I'm just going to go and sit downstairs and watch Netflix, or I'm going to go and play a computer game and then really not achieve anything, and then come back to it and be bored again because I'm doing the same thing again. Remain within the painting and just paint something completely different. Like, here's your comfort zone, go over there. Like, pick something. If you don't paint Age of Sigmar, pick a character up, and just go, I'm going to paint this on the side, 30 minutes of break up sessions to just literally focus my attention to something completely different, if that makes sense. That's the way that I deal with painting burnout or boredom. I don't stop painting. I just paint something so different from what I'm used to painting that it makes my brain and my painting mindset go to, I've got to be different on this, and you get interested in it because it's so far removed. It's the best tip I can give anybody, and because you're doing something that you're not used to with colors that you're not used to, you're actually going to improve as a painter, because in adversity or in a difficult situation or in a situation where you need to think or do something different, your brain works differently, and you actually do try and do it better or the best you can, because you've got that, am I going to do this right? Is this color going to go on smooth? Is this going to be neat, easy to edge highlight with, all that kind of stuff. You actually learn colors, learn how to do stuff that's better. Cool. So yeah.
No, that makes sense. Okay, next up, I would like to know how fast a professional painter paints, i.e. how quick can they paint a simple model like an intercessor to their bronze level, and how much time goes into a big and demanding model such as Be'lakor to platinum standard?
Yeah, okay. Well, the first things first is the scope of that to that is
vastly
massive.
Yeah.
It's huge. It's huge. So generally speaking, that's two things. So Be'lakor is a character to start off with, and obviously an intercessor is part of a unit. So that you're going to paint, if you're doing an intercessor on its own, you might as well paint a character, because in that way you're going to just paint that single miniature. So if I was to let's just base it on character to character. So we don't do characters to bronze. It's it's a premium gaming standard. It's for infantry, rank and file, tanks, and all those kind of things. And your characters are from silver, gold to plat. But generally speaking, you should be able to paint a silver character, for example. You should be able to do it in 2 days. 2 days. Roughly speaking, 2 7.5 hour shifts should be able to do it. That's the painting of it. The building, the cleaning of it, that's a bit arbitrary. It takes, as long as you're methodical with the action that you're doing, you can do that in an hour, and you can get the undercoat on in 10 minutes, and you can get the base coat on in 10 minutes. And the painting is the hard bit. But yeah, I'd say 2 days, 2, 3. If you're doing it long, if it takes you longer than 3 days to paint a character to display quality, which is silver, unfortunately, for us, you're not quick enough, if that makes sense. It's just I don't think that's a big ask when you're focused exclusively on one miniature. If you're batch painting, it's a little bit more arduous, because you're doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. but yeah, it gives you a bit of an idea. And then platinum will, how deep is the ocean? It's what are you doing to that model? This is, if you're going box art, then our platinum isn't box art. Our gold level is box art, and then our plat level is a competition quality, because we have, humbly, the team that we have here at Siege, we've got multiple competition winners, Slayer Sword winners, GD winners. You get a piece which, quite frankly, you would never ever give away. Like, it's a piece that goes on your shelf and you have for the rest of your life. And
Yeah.
not that you wouldn't be able to enter into competition, because we document everything so much that if it ever were to appear at a competition, we'd know that you'd tried to enter it, if that makes sense. But the reality is that you could spend tens and tens and tens and tens of hours on it. The average for like just a character, like, it's because we're bespoke, I can't really give you a thing, but I would say you're looking around about 50 hours upwards, for a character, because everything is assessed at a specific level. So every little bit of it has the attention that perhaps a whole model would undertake at a lower level, if that makes sense. Like, everything is scrupulously done. And this is why in our team, like, we incentivize people to push themselves as painters and get better and better and better, because we want, an ideal world, all of the team would have the ability to paint that super high end level and push themselves to that. Sure. So it's a very difficult question to go from this scope to this scope, but I hope that kind of explains it as best as I
definitely,
can. So yeah.
Next up, have you ever finished a model and ended up feeling you'd undercharged?
There are things called passion projects, and for me, if you stick anything red with a blood drop on it in front of me, I'm going to put more effort into it than other things. And there are obviously, I'll say this as a general blanket across the industry. Like, I think a lot of people think when it comes to commission painting, you're going to get to paint what you like all the time. That's not the case. Like, you will paint things that you absolutely despise. You will paint models that you don't like. You will paint color schemes that the client likes that don't work for color theory, or that don't complement very well, or but this is the difference between doing professionally as a job, and doing it on the side just for a bit of extra money. Like, if you do it on the side for a bit of extra money, you're probably not going to put as much effort into it, because you don't see it as a job. With us, we get a spec, it gets the same attention as a project that we love. And there are plenty of projects, and Joe will back me up on this, or anyone in the office will back me up on this. There are plenty of projects that come into the office that I, quite frankly, don't want to ever give back to the client, because I'm just like, I love this model so much, I don't want to give it back. But you've got to, and that's part of it. I feel very humbled and lucky to be able to go into a building every day and just be surrounded by stuff that I just love. And there are plenty of things, and I think all of us as painters and as artists are guilty of that. I see when you paint a miniature, whether it's for yourself or whether it's for a commission for somebody, because it does use that thing which is the time. It's a very emotive experience, because you're investing your thought and effort into the creation, into the finish of it. So sometimes separating yourself from it, like plenty of the guys will say when they send in projects, or if they're in the office and they're painting in the office and it's going to go out, there plenty of them will go, I don't really want to get rid of that miniature. I don't really want to give that back. Like, I don't want to send it because I love painting it so much. On the flip side, there are projects that are like, I can't wait for this one to be done. I mean, like, we've had some funny ones over the years. I think we've mentioned this in brief conversation before, but like, I think we've had like a Bacon Space Marine, themed Space Marine army. We've had Goth Celestines. We've had Angry Marines. We've had a Primaris captain themed after Severus Snape, dressed as Neville Longbottom's mum. We've had everything you could think of, and I would never say there's a project that I despised or didn't like. I think the idea is that we approach things with a blanket of, we're a business, it's professional, we have to do it to the best of our ability for the levels that are expected by the client, no matter what the scheme is. Obviously, there is a caveat of, if it is something which unfortunately is not something that we would like to publicize, or not something that morally that we would do, that doesn't happen. We will say to the client, I'm sorry, I'd rather refund than do a project that leaves the building that does not represent the culture and ethos of the company. I think that's really important to note as well, because otherwise that opens a floodgate to lots of different things. And I'd rather be quite categoric about that. We're not, if you have some crazy project that could be a little bit passé, we're not the company for you. It's, that's that.
Okay. Do you have a hard time getting large models such as Bellacore, once they're completed, to the customer intact?
Yeah, that's the other aspect of it that's quite frustrating. So we spend hours creating these models, and then for all intents and purposes, you put it in the hands of somebody that has no value or connection to that. And what I mean by that is obviously postage services. Now, I don't want to go on a rant about postal delivery companies and how parcels and boxes arrive in the condition I've seen some arrive in the past. There is an element of risk, but I think that the way we do it is that we pay for a high-end delivery service, and it's insured for full value. So whether it's internally domestic here in the UK or whether it's international, we've partnered with companies which offer a service which allow us to fully compensate if the need be. And I think that I would much rather be able to say to a customer, look, we've packed it as best as we can. If anything untoward happens, number one, you can either send it back to us, we'll cover the postage, we'll rework it, repair it, whatever needs to be done, and then resend it to you again, and cross our fingers that second time lucky that it's not going to be treated like a football. I can't sit here and say that we've had a squeaky clean record of delivery. Like, there's been the odd thing that's, that unfortunately we've done everything in our power to make sure that it arrives, be it internally in the UK or to Australia or Dubai or the States or Japan or any of the places that we ship to for our clients. And that along that journey, there's someone who's having a bad day or that doesn't like what their job and moving parcels and treats them like rubbish. And as a result, there's damage to the work that we've done. That is just unfortunately part of the thing. But what I'll always say, and this goes back to how I was in recruitment, is that I think whenever there's an adverse or negative situation, like something happens, and obviously parcels going missing or getting damaged isn't necessarily directly our fault, but obviously we are working with those companies, and therefore that blame then falls on our shoulders, irrespective of who handles it.
Yeah.
I think it's the way that you deal with a customer, which the customer values. I think you could have the worst situation in the world, like the models disappear off the face of the earth, and and the parcel worker steals them, or they, or that it gets flattened by a lorry or whatever. And as long as you take side with the customer and do everything in your power to make sure that that customer is fully satisfied and happy with the way that you've dealt with this adverse negative situation, I think that is a much better remedy to the actual damage and thing that's happened. There are far too many, again, trying to remain professional, there are far too many instances, not just within our industry, but in general with companies, where what they do is they go, oh, that's not our fault. Yeah. Sorry, claim it through the postage service. No. If, as and when, and I can say there's in every year, I can count them on one hand the times we've had either a slight bit of damage or a parcel's gone missing, and we've never had, we've never had a parcel go missing. We had one that went around most of Australia and then came back, and then we sent it again. But we've never actually had a parcel go missing, so to speak. All right. That parcel, we actually redone the project because it was doing a tour of Australia, redone the project and sent out another version, another complete fresh start on that project to the customer. The other one turned up, and then the client just sent the other one back. So we ended up having a spare kill team in the office. But the reality is, I think that is a situation. When something goes wrong, I think it's important for a business to step up and take either responsibility or deal with it, working with the carrier partner they work with. Like my contact at both of the delivery companies we work with, they know that if anything ever happens, I'm on the phone and I'm like, this has happened, here's the photos, I'm going to claim back through you, and obviously we're going to sort it out for our client, but I expect compensation. And that's what we do. We fully insure it for the value that the client has paid. Obviously that means that our postage costs are slightly higher, but what you're buying is that insurance and the ability for us to then go, pay us back the money, delivery partner, we'll sort it out, and then we'll do it for the client, and the client gets the project again, if that makes sense. Or it comes back to us, it gets repaired, and then we send it back out or whatever. I think how you handle the situation is super paramount in any business, not just painting toy soldiers for people. So yeah.
Okay. Would you recommend dry brushing or edge highlighting for a complete beginner?
I think both hold water. You wouldn't dry brush eyes on a model. You wouldn't obviously you can dry brush the armor panels if you want, like on tanks and infantry and whatever you can. They're two very different techniques used for different purposes. But it goes back to that thing I was saying about paint. Like paint isn't a bad paint and a technique isn't a bad technique. It's just more applicable to a certain thing than it is another thing. Edge highlighting develops brush control, consistency, accuracy, use of the tip of the brush, the side of the brush, all those things which you need to become a better painter, to develop skill, as I said, muscle memory in the hand, all those kind of things. Dry brushing is great for speed, for getting stuff done really quickly, you know, all those kind of things. And I think, you know, you can't really compare one technique to the other and say, this is better than this, or this is, I think for a beginner, the best mindset that we try and instill, even when we teach junior painters or teach people that come on classes that maybe haven't got that much experience, is that don't see one as better than the other, just see them as two different things to learn, hone and master, because you're going to use them for different things. Like I wouldn't, the only time I'd ever edge highlight rocks on a basis of a miniature is when I'm doing one of my competition pieces. Like if I'm doing something I'm investing 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 hours into, then I'm going to do that. But if I'm like my catch challenge, for example, if I've got loads of rocks on bases, there's no way in hell when I've got 100 infantry to paint, there's no way that I'm going to edge highlight the rocks on the bases. I'm going to dry brush them. So it's choosing that skill and that technique for the applicable task rather than going, well, that one's crap, that one's good. Yeah, like that's the way that I look at it. Just see them as different hurdles to jump over and master, and then it gives you a much better foundation of skill for the next model that you apply. So yeah.
Okay, yeah, good answer. So last one, are there any particular models that you are interested in painting that you haven't yet?
Yes, there's a few models. There's a few models that I've got made for me through custom service that I can't wait to paint. Can't wait to show, to release and show. And they're just passion projects for me, like models that I've always loved. And if you read between the lines, you know that they're going to come from a certain chapter. But yeah, for the models that come out. So I actually want to paint more Age of Sigmar models. I love 40k. I love 8 foot tall bolter wooden space marines that are clad in red armor. But I think inherently the Age of Sigmar range has got a lot of just phenomenal jaw dropping miniatures, which for a painter, not that I'm interested in the game or wanted to play it, or I think from a painter perspective, that it's just a completely different canvas to approach using new techniques or new colors or new different things. Like the Iden Thekin range, there's some awesome models in there that I want to paint. Like Ilariel, for example, an incredible model, like just absolutely jaw-dropping model. Again, not for anything to do with gaming, or maybe not even for a competition or something like that, but just to actually get to work on that model and paint it. I think that they're the kind of things that I want to approach when I get some time in the future. But at the moment I've got four sort of custom service models which I am chomping at the bit to get some time to paint. I'm doing one currently that's fairly public, and then there's another 3 which I'm just keeping a little bit in the shadows. So yeah, but they're all just, you know, my favorite models that I just want for my personal collection, for me to paint my own version of them, basically. So yeah, so that's what I would say.
Awesome. Okay, so that about wraps it up. I hope you enjoyed the listen, guys. Again, if this is something you'd like to see more of, be sure to let me know. Or even if you'd like to see James back on the channel and you have a few more questions for him to answer, then as always feel free to drop them in the comments. But with that said, huge thank you to all my subscribers. Your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. But with that said, I am off and I'll see you all again real soon.